Welcome to our deep dive into Sapiens, a brief history of humankind by Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah.
So we're going to be exploring some excerpts from this book and just uncovering, I think, a really fascinating perspective on humanity's journey from like the cognitive revolution to today. One thing that immediately hooked me when I started reading this book was this idea that wheat might have domesticated us.
Interesting.
Not the other way around.
Yeah, that's one of the most intriguing aspects, I think, of Harari's work, is that he challenges our preconceived notions about history.
Yeah.
You know, rather than like a dry timeline of this happened, then this happened.
Right.
He digs deep into the forces that have shaped us, both biological and those we've imagined.
It makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about history.
Yeah.
Let's start with the cognitive revelation.
Okay.
Harari explains that around 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens developed language, the ability to tell stories, and this unique capacity to cooperate in large numbers.
Yeah. It's like we suddenly shifted gears and took a completely different path.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Harari highlights a fascinating point that our complex language might have evolved from something as simple as gossip.
Oh, wow.
You know, the need to share information about who to trust, who was a cheat, who was doing what with whom.
Interesting.
That kind of social information was vital for survival in those early Sapiens bands.
Wow. So you're saying social media is like a modern day version of that ancient gossip network.
Exactly.
Except now it's global. I never thought of it that way.
It's a compelling parallel, isn't it? And this ability to create stories, to imagine things that don't physically exist, is what Harari calls imagined realities.
Right.
These imagined realities, things like companies, nations, even money.
Yeah.
They don't exist outside of our shared beliefs and agreements, yet they shape our world.
He uses Peugeot,
Yes.
the car company, as an example.
Exactly. Peugeot, the company, isn't something you can physically touch or see. It's a legal fiction.
Yeah.
An idea that we collectively agree exists and has certain rights and responsibilities.
Yeah.
But if we stopped believing in it,
Right.
it would simply vanish.
That's a really powerful concept.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how many other things we consider real are actually just shared beliefs. It makes you question everything.
It certainly does. And this concept of imagined realities helps us understand how things like corporations and nations wield so much power. Think about the recent debates about corporate influence on governments.
Yeah.
Harari's framework gives us a new lens to analyze these complex issues.
This also makes me think about the agricultural revolution.
Okay.
We often hear about it as this great leap forward for humanity.
Right.
But Harari argues that it wasn't all sunshine and roses, was it?
Absolutely. While the traditional view praises agriculture as progress, Harari points out that it had some serious downsides.
Like what?
Hunter-gatherers enjoyed a varied diet, more leisure time, and weren't tied to one place.
Yeah.
Agriculture meant harder work, a less diverse diet, and increased vulnerability to famine and disease because you're relying on just a few crops.
It's like we traded freedom and variety for stability and predictability. And the fact that wheat might have domesticated us, that's a real mind bender.
It is.
How could a plant manipulate humans?
Well, Harari suggests it wasn't conscious manipulation, but a symbiotic relationship.
Okay.
Wheat benefited from our efforts to cultivate and spread it.
Okay.
We cleared land, irrigated and weeded all to ensure a stable food supply. In the process, we became dependent on this one plant, changing our entire way of life.
So we were working for the wheat, not the other way around.
In a sense, yes.
That's fascinating. And this brings us to another big shift.
Okay.
How did the agricultural revolution lead to more complex social structures?
Think about it. As people settled down and produced surplus food, you had larger populations, specialized labor, and a need for new systems of order.
Yeah.
Harari uses the example of Hammurabi's Code, one of the earliest known sets of written laws to illustrate how these imagined orders emerged.
Hammurabi's Code.
Yes.
It wasn't just about writing things down, right? There's something more to it.
You're right. It was about creating a hierarchy.
Okay.
Superiors, commoners, slaves, each with their own rights and obligations.
Right.
This system was a way to manage large populations and maintain order.
Yeah.
But it also enshrined inequality.
It makes you wonder if these hierarchies are inevitable.
Yeah.
Do humans always need to organize themselves this way?
Right.
Are we inherently programmed for social stratification?
That's one of the big questions Harari raises.
Yeah.
He argues that while biological differences exist,
Okay.
like the fact that women bear children,
Right.
societies tend to build upon those differences
Yeah.
and create elaborate cultural norms and hierarchies
Right.
that aren't necessarily rooted in biology.
Like patriarchy. Harari points out how it's been so persistent throughout history, often justified as natural, even though it's more about cultural conditioning than biology.
Exactly. He even asks why women, despite potential advantages in social intelligence and manipulation,
Yeah.
have so rarely been the rulers and conquerors throughout history.
That's interesting.
It really challenges us to think about the power of these culturally constructed roles.
And all of this ties back to the power of stories, doesn't it?
Yes.
Empires and large-scale societies often rely on shared myths to legitimize their rule and unite diverse populations.
Absolutely. Take the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. He didn't just conquer people.
Yeah.
He tried to win their loyalty by respecting their customs
Interesting.
and even presenting himself as a kind of universal ruler working for the benefit of all.
It's almost like a brand.
Yes.
Creating an image that resonates with people and makes them buy into the system literally and figuratively.
That's a brilliant analogy.
And speaking of buying into systems, we can't forget money.
Yeah. It's another imagined reality that revolutionized human cooperation.
Exactly.
I find the concept of money fascinating.
Okay.
Harari explains how money, this psychological construct, converts matter into mind.
Yes.
I mean, a cowrie shell or a dollar bill has no inherent value.
Right.
Its worth is based solely on what we collectively believe.
You've hit the nail on the head. And that belief is tied to so many things.
Right.
Politics, social structures, ideologies. Harari talks about the importance of trust in money.
Yeah.
And how it's connected to the stability of these systems.
It's amazing to think how something that doesn't physically exist can have such a profound impact on our lives.
Yeah.
And while money enables large-scale trade and cooperation,
Right.
Harari also highlights a potential downside.
They're right. He discusses how money can erode local traditions and values in favor of the cold, impersonal laws of supply and demand. It's a double-edged sword.
It is.
And this tension becomes even more apparent during the scientific revolution. It's incredible how seemingly unrelated events throughout history are actually connected.
Yeah.
I'm eager to hear more about the scientific revolution.
The scientific revolution completely changed humanity's relationship with knowledge and power.
How so?
Harari points out the core principles of science,
Okay.
admitting ignorance, relying on observation and mathematics.
Right.
It was a radical shift from relying solely on ancient wisdom and religious texts.
Yeah.
It emphasized the importance of questioning,
Yeah.
of constantly seeking new knowledge.
That's a pretty big leap. And this new way of thinking had a huge impact on European imperialism, didn't it?
Absolutely. They fueled each other's growth.
How so?
Think about Captain Cook's voyages.
Okay.
They were about scientific discovery, like finding a cure for scurvy,
Right.
but also about mapping new territories and claiming them for the British Empire.
Yeah.
Science provided the knowledge and technology for these expeditions, while imperial expansion opened up new avenues for exploration and exploitation.
It's fascinating how science, which we often think of as objective and unbiased,
Right.
played a role in shaping colonial power dynamics.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about the potential biases that might still be embedded in our scientific pursuits today.
That's a very important point.
Yeah.
And Harari introduces the concept of culturism,
Okay.
which he argues has replaced racism in many ways.
Interesting.
It's the idea that certain cultures are inherently superior
Okay.
or more advanced than others based on their history, technology, or social structures.
So instead of judging based on race, we judge based on culture.
Exactly.
It's a new way to justify old power dynamics.
Exactly.
Wow, this deep dive is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about history.
There's so much more to explore. Harari takes us on a whirlwind journey through the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
examines our pursuit of happiness,
Right.
and even delves into the meaning of life itself. I'm eager to continue this conversation with you.
Me too. It's amazing how these big historical shifts connect to fundamental questions about human existence.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to live a meaningful life?
Right.
It's a question philosophers have pondered for centuries, and Harari tackles it in such an insightful way,
Yeah.
blending history, biology, and even a bit of economics.
What I find fascinating is how he delves into the biological basis of happiness,
Mm-hmm.
discussing the role of serotonin
Okay.
and how it might limit our capacity for sustained joy.
Right.
It challenges our assumptions about what happiness really is.
So are we saying no matter how much we achieve,
Yeah,
our brains are wired to return to a baseline level of happiness?
it seems that way.
Are we stuck on a hedonic treadmill chasing fleeting moments of pleasure?
Right.
It makes you wonder if all those self-help gurus have it wrong.
Harari certainly presents a thought-provoking perspective.
Yeah.
But he also explores contrasting viewpoints.
Okay.
He discusses the work of Daniel Kahneman,
Right.
a Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist,
Yeah.
who's studied how people experience happiness in their daily lives.
I remember reading about that study.
Yeah.
Kahneman found that things we assume should make us happy,
Yeah.
like having children,
Right.
involve a lot of drudgery and frustration when you look at it moment by moment. It
Sure
kind
does.
of bursts that bubble of idyllic family life.
Exactly. But here's the interesting part.
Okay.
Even though parents experience plenty of unpleasant moments,
Yeah.
they still report that their children are their greatest source of happiness.
Right.
It suggests that our subjective feelings
Yeah.
don't always align with what we truly value or find meaningful.
So maybe happiness isn't about feeling good all the time.
Right.
Maybe it's about something more.
Mhm.
It's about finding deeper meaning in our lives,
Yeah.
even amidst the ups and downs.
That seems to be Harari's point.
Yeah.
He highlights how many traditional philosophies and religions like Buddhism
Right.
emphasize the importance of understanding our own minds and accepting the reality of suffering. It's not about denying negative emotions,
Yeah.
but about recognizing them without letting them control us.
That resonates with me.
Yeah.
It's not about chasing fleeting highs, but finding a sense of peace within ourselves,
Right.
regardless of our external circumstances.
Yeah.
It's a more grounded approach to happiness.
Yeah, it is.
And this leads us to another fascinating concept from the book,
Okay.
intelligent design.
Interesting.
But he's not talking about it in the traditional sense.
Right. No, not a divine creator.
Yeah.
He's referring to humans becoming the designers,
Okay.
increasingly shaping the world around us, from domesticated animals to, well, potentially even ourselves.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious science fiction territory.
Yeah,
But he connects it to history, doesn't he?
he does.
Starting with the agricultural revolution,
Right.
showing how humans began selectively breeding plants and animals, essentially manipulating nature to suit our needs.
Exactly.
It's like we were already playing God back then.
Yes.
In a way.
In a way.
Precisely. He uses the example of chickens,
Right.
how we've bred them to be so plump and docile that they're unrecognizable from their wild ancestors.
Right.
It's a form of intelligent design driven by human desires and ingenuity. And he takes this idea even further, suggesting that we might soon be able to design superhumans.
Yeah.
He talks about advances in genetic engineering, bionic limbs, even the possibility of creating artificial intelligence that rivals our own.
It's pretty wild, isn't it?
Wow, that's both exhilarating and a bit terrifying.
Yeah.
It raises so many questions about the ethics and potential consequences of such power.
Absolutely. And Harari connects these scientific advancements
Right.
with our age-old desire for immortality,
Right.
for transcending our biological limitations.
Right.
He brings up the Gilgamesh Project, this ancient myth about the quest for eternal life, and argues that it's still driving much of our scientific progress today.
Right.
It's like this primal urge is woven into our very being.
It seems we've always been pushing the boundaries of what's possible, driven by this deep-seated yearning to overcome our limitations.
Yeah.
But as you said, it raises significant ethical questions.
It does.
If we can design humans with enhanced abilities,
Right.
who decides what those abilities are? And what happens to those who are left behind?
Yeah.
What do you think about those implications?
These are questions society needs to grapple with urgently,
Yeah.
especially as these technologies advance.
Right.
Harari doesn't offer easy answers,
Right.
but he lays out the stakes,
Yeah.
prompting us to consider the potential consequences of our actions.
It's almost overwhelming to think about all the possibilities, both positive and negative. We could eradicate diseases, engineer crops to feed the world,
Yeah.
but we could also create even greater inequalities, unforeseen consequences that could spiral out of control. It's a lot to process.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
It feels like we're on the cusp of a new era. And the choices we make now will have a profound impact on the future of our species.
Right.
It's a defining moment for humanity.
And this is where history becomes such a valuable guide.
It is.
It helps us understand how we arrived at this point.
Right.
What lessons we can learn from the past as we navigate these uncharted waters.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the key lessons we can draw from history to guide our decisions about the future?
I think one of the most important lessons is that progress isn't always linear or straightforward. There are often unintended consequences,
Right.
trade-offs, and unforeseen challenges.
We can't just assume that technology will solve all our problems.
No.
We need to be mindful of the potential downsides
Right.
and approach these advancements with caution and critical thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to remember that technology is a tool,
Yeah.
and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. It all depends on the intentions and values of those who wield it.
Yeah.
We need to be conscious of the values we're embedding in our creations, the kind of future we're shaping.
It's like we're holding this immense power in our hands.
Yeah.
The power to shape the destiny of our species.
Right.
It's both exhilarating and daunting.
It is.
It makes you wonder if we're truly ready for such responsibility.
It's a question that deserves careful consideration.
Yeah.
And I think Harari's book serves as a powerful reminder that history isn't just about what happened in the past. It's about understanding the present
Right.
and imagining the possibilities of the future.
Right.
It's a tool for navigating the complexities of our time.
So as we stand on the brink of this potential technological revolution,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the future of humanity?
Harari ends the book with a truly thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
He asks,
Okay.
what if the next stage of evolution isn't biological, but technological?
Wow.
What if we create artificial intelligence that surpasses our own?
Right.
Or merge with technology to become something entirely new? It challenges us to confront the very definition of what it means to be human.
It's mind-blowing to consider that the future of our species might not be determined by biology, but by the technology we create. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a concept that pushes us to reevaluate everything we think we know about ourselves and our place in the universe. Are we on the verge of transcending our biological limitations and entering a new era of existence? It's a question that sparks both excitement and a bit of trepidation, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. It's like we're stepping into the unknown. And as we contemplate this potential future, it's crucial to consider the ethical implications. Harari emphasizes the importance of making conscious choices about the kind of future we want to create. What are your thoughts on that?
I think one of the most compelling aspects of Harari's work is that he doesn't offer simple answers. He presents us with a vast panorama of human history from our humble beginnings to our current technological prowess, and invites us to grapple with the complexities of our own existence. He doesn't shy away from the big questions. What does it mean to be human? What is the meaning of life? And how do we navigate the ethical dilemmas of our time?
He doesn't give us a roadmap, but rather a set of tools to help us think critically about these challenges and make informed choices. It's empowering because it reminds us that we have agency, that we're not just passive bystanders in this unfolding story.
Exactly. Harari's book is a call to action. It's a reminder that we're not just inheritors of the past, but also architects of the future. The choices we make today, both individually and collectively, will shape the world for generations to come. Do you feel that sense of responsibility?
Absolutely. It's both humbling and inspiring. And it brings us back to the core of this deep dive. Knowledge is power. The more we understand about our history, our biology, the forces that have shaped us, the better equipped we are to make those choices. What are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. Understanding our past gives us context for the present and helps us navigate the complexities of the future. Harari's book provides us with a wealth of knowledge, but it's up to us to use that knowledge wisely.
It's like he's given us a flashlight to illuminate the path ahead, but we still have to choose which direction to take. What resonates most with you from this deep dive?
The sheer scope of human history and the incredible journey we've been on. From hunter-gatherers to agricultural societies, from empires to the scientific revolution, from the industrial revolution to the digital age, it's awe-inspiring to consider how far we've come.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? And amidst all these grand narratives, Harari also highlights the importance of individual stories, of the choices people made that shaped the course of history. It reminds us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely. It's those individual acts of courage, creativity, and compassion that have driven progress and propelled us forward. And those same qualities will be essential as we navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Sapiens, I'm curious to hear what stands out to you as a listener. What ideas, concepts, or stories resonated most? What questions are you still pondering?
Harari's book is a springboard for countless conversations. It sparked so many thoughts and questions in my own mind. But ultimately, the most important takeaway for me is this: the future is not preordained. It's a tapestry woven from the choices we make every single day.
It's a powerful message, and one that I hope will stay with you long after this deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of humankind. May it inspire you to continue exploring, questioning, and shaping the world around you.